Welcome to today's historical deep dive into a man who didn't just live history, he rewrote it. He was a general who became an emperor, a revolutionary who became a monarch, and a legend who remains a riddle. Imagine building an empire from the ashes of chaos, only for it to crumble under the weight of your own ambition. Pretty wild ride, right? We're pulling back the velvet curtain on Napoleon Bonaparte, exploring the moments that forged him, the decisions that defined him, and the legacy that still echoes across centuries. If you love immersive, real storytelling about ambition and downfall, hit like and subscribe. It helps us more than you know. And before we step into the past, drop a comment with your favorite Napoleon quote, or the moment that shocked you most. Let's begin and change the way you think about history. You stand in the pale morning light, filtering through the tall windows of the Tuileries Palace. The air is cool, carrying the faint, crisp scent of early November in Paris. Just weeks ago, on the 18th of Brumaire, year 8, November 9th, 1799, you, General Bonaparte, seized control in a chaotic, almost farcical coup that saw you nearly lynched before being saved by your brother Lucien's quick thinking and the bayonets of your grenadiers. It wasn't the clean, decisive military takeover history often simplifies. It was messy, improvised, a gamble won by sheer nerve and the fatigue of a nation. Now, the revolutionary shouting is gone, replaced by a silence that hums, not with fervor, but with tense anticipation. The Directory is gone, dissolved like mist, replaced by a consulate, and you are the first consul. The power feels immense, a physical weight settling onto your shoulders, a low vibration beneath your polished boots. Paris, a city weary of a decade of the revolution's bloody, unpredictable pendulum swings between anarchy and terror, breathes a cautious sigh of relief, or perhaps just profound exhaustion. They crave order, stability, a strong hand, any hand, to guide them out of the perpetual storm. You walk the polished floors, once trod by kings and queens, now echoing only the click of your boots. This is not the simple general's tent. It is the seat of power, dripping with the history of deposed dynasties, a place where the air itself seems heavy with secrets and ambition. You study the maps on the wall. France, bruised and fractured by years of internal strife and external war, surrounded by enemies eager to carve it up. But within its borders lies a vast, resilient potential yearning to be harnessed, rebuilt, directed. You hold the reins of a nation, not by birthright, not by election, but by audacity, timing, and military might. The revolutionary promise of equality, fraternity, and liberty still hangs in the air like faded silk banners, beautiful in concept, but perhaps impractical, even dangerous in this new precarious reality. The question isn't just how to rebuild France. You are a military engineer, a logistical genius. You understand structure. The deeper, more dangerous question is what France should become under your sole direction. The temptation is present, subtle yet undeniable. A serpent whispering in the newfound silence, to make this power permanent, unchallengeable, rooted not just in temporary necessity for stability, but in something enduring, something absolute, something royal. This silence is the pause before destiny takes a definitive and perhaps fatal turn. Ask yourself, in a nation desperate for salvation, how thin is the line between a savior and a sovereign? France lies broken, exhausted by the fury of revolution, a tangle of conflicting laws and ravaged infrastructure. You step into this void, not just a military victor, but the inheritor of chaos. The monumental task ahead is to rebuild, to forge a nation anew from the revolutionary rubble. Your tools are not cannons now, but decrees, codes, institutions. The most enduring symbol of this reconstruction is the Civil Code, the Code Napoleon. You don't write it yourself, but you drive its creation with relentless energy, presiding over debates, demanding clarity and logic. It is your hammer and chisel, striking at the inconsistencies of centuries of feudal law, replacing a confusing mosaic with a unified, standardized system. Imagine the complexity of inheritance, property rights, contracts. Suddenly, there are clear rules across the land. This isn't just legal reform. It's an act of national unification, binding disparate regions under a single legal framework. It's a painstaking administrative conquest, less bloody, but arguably more profound than any battle. Simultaneously, you create the Bank of France, anchoring the unstable currency and restoring financial confidence. You centralize education with lycees, shaping the minds of the future elite and ensuring loyalty to the state. You pour resources into roads, canals, and ports, the sinews of a modern economy, facilitating trade and enabling rapid troop movements. Every one of these acts is a deliberate stroke of statecraft, designed to consolidate your control, yes, but also to bring order, efficiency, and a tangible sense of progress to a nation weary of turmoil. The people see the results firsthand. Markets function predictably. Property disputes are settled under clear rules. Goods move more easily. A sense of shared purpose, however centrally directed, begins to emerge from the wreckage of the old regime and the terror. This relentless administrative energy demonstrates a profound truth. True power isn't just taken on the battlefield. It's built, brick by painstaking brick, through competence and vision. A leader solidifies authority not just by decree, but by proving they can deliver stability and progress in the daily lives of their citizens. This era offers a critical insight. Effective governance can buy consent, sometimes masking the underlying shift away from democratic ideals. You deliver order and prosperity, and in return, many are willing to overlook the centralization of power, the suppression of opposition, the tightening grip on liberty. It prompts us to reflect. Are we, even today, more easily swayed by practical improvements in our lives, a functioning economy, safe streets, efficient services, than by the abstract, sometimes messy, principles of freedom and representation? You built a magnificent structure of state. But what was the cost paid in the quiet corners of freedom? You turn your attention inward, to the deep, festering wound dividing France. The revolution tore the church from the state, exiled priests, confiscated lands, leaving a nation of believers alienated from their government. This schism is not just spiritual. It is a source of constant, dangerous opposition. You see the raw power the Catholic faith still holds over the vast majority of the population. A power that, left unchecked or actively hostile, could easily undermine your control. Your solution? A pragmatic, breathtaking negotiation with the Pope himself. You dispatch envoys to Rome, initiating talks that will culminate in the Concordat of 1801. This isn't a surrender to the old order, far from it. You acknowledge Catholicism as the religion of the majority of Frenchmen. not the state religion. You bring the church back under a leash. Bishops are nominated by you, approved by the Pope. Priests are paid by the state, making them effectively civil servants. Church property remains confiscated, a subtle but firm reminder of state supremacy. This act, ostensibly about healing the soul of France, is a masterclass in political engineering, neutralizing a powerful enemy by bringing it into your orbit, making it dependent on your regime. It buys you legitimacy among traditionalists, calms the countryside, and removes a potent rallying point for counter-revolution. Simultaneously, you extend a cautious hand to the émigrés, the exiled aristocracy and wealthy royalists who fled the revolution. They hold influence, connections, and potential wealth that, if reintegrated carefully, could strengthen your regime rather than oppose it. You issue amnesties, allowing thousands to return, but under strict surveillance. You observe them, categorize them, and, with careful calculation, begin to blend the old elite with the new revolutionary one. You marry revolutionary generals into old noble families. You create a new form of honor, the Legion of Honor, accessible to both meritocratic newcomers and repentant aristocrats, binding them together in loyalty to you. This is not about ideological purity. It is about power consolidated and stabilized. You are weaving a new social fabric, one that incorporates the strengths of the old regime with the opportunities of the new, all centered around your authority. The Concordat and the émigré return are not acts of principle, but acts of expediency. You bend the knee slightly to Rome and open the door slightly to the old world, not out of belief, but because it serves the ultimate goal, securing your grip on France. This reveals a core truth about your leadership. Principle is secondary to pragmatism when control is at stake. Ask yourself, was this brilliant statesmanship recognizing the need to heal national wounds by any means necessary? Or was it calculated cynicism, betraying revolutionary ideals by making peace with the church and the aristocracy, simply to bolster your own personal power? What would you sacrifice for stability? Assassination plots coil around you like vipers in the shadows. Royalists, remnants of the old world dreaming of Bourbon restoration, and even disgruntled Jacobins, those who once hailed revolution, now turn their venom towards the Consul for life. The danger is not abstract. It is real, palpable, a dagger waiting in a dark alley. The most significant threat manifests in the intricate Concordat conspiracy, a network reaching into the highest levels of émigré society, clutching fingers linked to the very monarchy you replaced. This plot is a stark reminder of the precariousness of your position, the constant pressure of enemies who see you as a usurper. Your response is swift, decisive, and chillingly brutal. The perceived threat becomes a pretext, an excuse etched in blood. You target the Duke of Enghien, a young Bourbon prince living in exile in neutral Baden. He is dragged from foreign soil, kidnapped in an act that violates international law. A hasty, secret court-martial follows. A sham trial designed for a predetermined outcome. No real defense, no due process, only the swift pronouncement of guilt based on association and suspicion. In the pre-dawn hours of March 21, 1804, in the moat of the Château de Vincennes, he is shot. The prince falls, and the reverberations of that execution echo across Europe, a shockwave that stuns courts and capitals alike. This act reveals a dark, terrifying truth about leadership under duress. The fear for one's life, the perceived threat to the regime, can justify monstrous acts, the suspension of all legal and moral boundaries. The insight here is how easily a leader, consumed by the need for security or the desire to eliminate opposition, can manipulate real or manufactured threats into a pretext for terror. The Duke of Enghien was not actively involved in the Cadoudal plot, but his Bourbon blood made him a convenient target, a symbolic blow against the old regime and anyone associated with it. This forces a profound moral reflection. Does the security of the state, or perhaps more accurately, the security of the leader at its head, ever justify the complete abandonment of law, justice, and human rights? You, Napoleon, answer this question with a bullet. The blood on your hands is indelible. Yet, paradoxically, this brutal act cements your break with the past, with any pretense of restoring or even compromising with the old Bourbon world. By executing a Bourbon prince, you burn the bridges back to the monarchy, leaving no path open but the one forward, towards establishing your own dynasty, your own imperial crown. The moat at Vincennes becomes the ground where the last faint possibility of a Bourbon return through your tolerance is extinguished, clearing a path for the coronation that awaits. What would you have done, standing in his boots, facing down shadows and plots? Would you have crossed that line? The air in Paris is thick with the residue of fear. You had survived the bomb blast, the plots, the assassin's blades. Yet, the survival itself ignites a new, insidious campaign. The whispers start subtly, circulating among the Senate, the Council of State, and even within the military elite you've meticulously cultivated. They look at you, the sole pillar supporting the fragile structure of post-revolutionary France, and they see not just a leader, but a target. The argument is logical, almost seductive in its simplicity. Your life is too precious, too vital to the nation's stability, to be left vulnerable to a single conspiracy. The Consulate, born of the Revolution, is powerful, yes, but it lacks permanence. It is not hereditary. What happens, they ask, echoing the anxieties of a population weary of chaos, if something were to happen to you? The hard-won peace could dissolve overnight, plunging France back into the uncertainty of the Directory, or worse, the terror. This is where the true power play emerges, a masterclass in leveraging crisis for political gain. The very attempts on your life, meant to destabilize, become the ultimate justification for absolute stability. Your stability. Those who crave titles, wealth, and security under your reign amplify the fear. They frame your indispensability not just as a fact, but as a national security imperative. For France to be truly secure, they insist, the regime itself must be secure. And that means making it permanent, making it hereditary. The word hangs in the air, cautiously at first, then with increasing boldness. Emperor. It's a loaded term, echoing the very monarchy the nation shed blood to overthrow. Yet they present it not as a return to the past, but as the ultimate evolution of the future, a necessary bulwark against internal enemies and external threats. It's a narrative crafted with cynical precision, twisting genuine concern for stability into an argument for absolute rule. This isn't just an organic surge of public opinion. It is a symphony of carefully directed voices, playing on the nation's deepest fears. It's a stark reflection on how easily the cries for national security or stability can be weaponized, morphing into the justification for consolidating power, for sacrificing liberty at the altar of perceived order. You watch this movement build, knowing its origins aren't purely selfless. They want a king in all but name, and they want the security and privilege that comes with serving a permanent throne. But you also see the strategic advantage. Permanence equals legitimacy on the European stage, continuity that rivals the old monarchies. Ask yourself, was this inevitable, a natural progression born of necessity? Or was it the calculated next step in a grand design, accelerated by circumstance, but always the ultimate destination? The path to the throne is paved not just with victories, but with the clever manipulation of the nation's deepest anxieties. The pieces are in place. The consulship for life was merely a stepping stone, a rehearsal. You understand that truly absolute power in a post-revolutionary age cannot simply seize the throne like a medieval king. It must be given, manufactured by the very institutions it will subsume. You orchestrate the next act with chilling precision. The Senate, now a pliable body, stacked with your loyalists and appointees, begins to hum with compliant anticipation. They know what is expected. A motion is drafted, the language meticulously chosen to soothe lingering Republican sensibilities while forging a new imperial reality. The decree is read aloud, formal words sealing an inevitable fate. It declares that the government of the Republic is entrusted to an emperor who takes the title of Emperor of the French. Pause on that phrase, Emperor of the French, not of France. This isn't a slip of the quill, it's calculated political theater. An Emperor of France reigns over territory, a traditional monarch claiming dominion over the soil. An Emperor of the French, however, implies sovereignty derived from the people. It's a subtle, almost perverse, nod to the revolutionary concept of popular sovereignty, the very ideal that overthrew the monarchy, now twisted, weaponized, and harnessed to legitimize a new, more absolute power. You are presenting yourself not as a ruler of a kingdom, but as the embodiment and chosen leader by a nation, even if that choice was meticulously curated and controlled. This is the mechanical turning point, the legal mechanism clicked into place by compliant hands. Power isn't being seized at the point of a bayonet this time. It's being conferred through a vote, a declaration, a bureaucratic act. It's a profound insight into the nature of power. Even absolute control seeks a veneer of legitimacy, manufacturing consent through compliant institutions, maintaining the forms of republicanism even as their substance is hollowed out and discarded like a molted skin. The republic is dead. Long live the emperor. Declared by the very body sworn to protect the republic. It possesses a dark, almost humorous irony. The revolution's ghost is now the imperial tailor. This strategic transition prompts reflection. How often do modern power shifts, even in supposedly democratic systems, occur not through outright popular mandate or violent revolution, but through the clever, persistent manipulation of existing legal and political processes? Through the packing of courts, the rewriting of rules, the manufacturing of a consent that looks official but lacks genuine popular will. You didn't ask for the crown. You had the institution you controlled give it to you. It's a chilling masterclass in political chess, where the pieces are laws and the board is the will of a nation. The Senate, that relic you expertly maneuvered, has done its part. It has laid the crown at your feet, declaring you emperor. But you, Napoleon, understand the shifting sands of power in this post-revolutionary world. A simple decree isn't enough. The whispers of divine right are dead. The roar of the people, however engineered, is the new music of legitimacy. And so, the Senate's pronouncement is swiftly followed by a nationwide plebiscite, a vote, ostensibly by every French citizen. Imagine the scene: ballot boxes in town squares, amidst lingering memories of guillotines and the promise of stability you embody. The question is simple, yet monumental. Do you approve the Senate's proposal to make Napoleon Bonaparte Emperor of the French? The official results flood back, a seemingly tidal wave of affirmation. Over 3.5 million votes in favor, barely 2,500 against, a staggering 99.9% yes. On paper, it is an unprecedented popular mandate, a deafening chorus of approval for your ascension. This isn't just the Senate's will. You can now claim it's the express, overwhelming desire of the nation itself. This outcome provides the crucial, unassailable foundation you crave. You are not merely seizing power. You are accepting it, bestowed upon you by the very people you conquered, saved, and now seek to rule absolutely. It's a brilliant, breathtaking manipulation. You invoke the ultimate symbol of revolutionary sovereignty, the direct will of the people, expressed through a national vote, not to empower them, but to elevate yourself beyond challenge. It's like using the architect's compass, not to draw a circle for everyone, but to draw a cage around dissent, crowned with your own silhouette. But look closer, beyond the official figures trumpeted from Paris. Modern historians peel back the layers, revealing the mechanics of this choice. Participation was high, yes, but the counting? That's where the numbers begin to hum a different tune. Votes were publicly declared, often under the watchful eye of officials whose careers depended on a favorable outcome. Negative votes were sometimes recorded under no-shows or simply ignored. In some regions, army commanders reportedly tallied the votes of their soldiers. Unanimity was the predictable result. This plebiscite wasn't a free expression of will. It was a carefully orchestrated performance, a national acclamation stage-managed to produce the required result. This act underscores a perilous truth about power, a chilling reflection that resonates even today. Referendums, plebiscites, intended as tools of direct democracy, pure expressions of the collective voice, can be corrupted, bent into instruments of autocratic validation. You offer a choice, yes, but only between a predefined outcome and an implied, terrifying alternative: stability under your rule, or the chaos, bloodshed, and uncertainty of a return to revolutionary turmoil or Bourbon restoration. Is that a genuine choice? How reliable can the expression of popular will ever truly be when information is controlled, opposition is suppressed, and the fear of the alternative dictates the vote? You didn't give France a choice. You presented them with a staged referendum on your inevitable destiny, forcing them to affirm a path already laid out. It is a dark mirror held up to the very ideals you once championed, showing how easily the language of liberation can be twisted into the chains of absolute rule. The people's choice was, in essence, a choice presented by the emperor, not of the people. You stand before the Senate, the mantle of first consul heavy, but your gaze is fixed on something higher, heavier still. The Republic, born of blood and fire, seems insufficient. You have rebuilt France, ended civil war, conquered nations. But what secures it all? Not the fragile mandate of citizens, not the shifting sands of revolutionary zeal. You crave permanence, the undeniable, unassailable legitimacy that only comes from the ultimate symbol of power, a crown. You orchestrate the plebiscite, a carefully managed affirmation, and the title shifts from first consul to emperor. The Senate, once the voice of a nascent republic, becomes a stage for acclamation. This is the pivot point, the profound betrayal of the revolutionary principle of égalité. The Consulate, for all its authoritarian tendencies, at least maintained the idea of a republic, of citizens leading citizens. But the empire? You shatter that illusion. Hierarchy, titles, court rituals, they all flood back in, a tide of the old order washing over the revolutionary shores. The Tuileries Palace, once a symbol of deposed royalty, now bustles with your new court. Dukes, counts, princes, titles not earned through lineage at first, but bestowed by you, your family, your loyal generals, your most trusted administrators. They become the new nobility. You, the man who ascended through sheer, undeniable merit, are busy forging a system based on favor, loyalty, and eventually inherited privilege. It's the ultimate irony. The architect of the post-revolutionary state reconstructs the very structure the revolution sought to dismantle. This transition reveals a deep, perhaps tragic, truth about power and principle. Ambition, once it reaches the pinnacle, can become a corrosive acid, eating away at the very ideals that fueled the ascent. You sought power through radical means, tearing down the old regime, leveraging the fervor of change. Yet, to secure that power, you revert to the most ancient, conservative form of legitimacy: monarchy, dynasty, inherent rank. It's like building a magnificent, revolutionary engine, only to house it in the gilded cage of the past. You create a system where your brother, simply because he is your brother, can become a king, while others who shed blood for the republic watch from outside the newly erected walls of privilege. Here's the profound insight. Does absolute power inherently necessitate a compromise with, or even a replication of, the old order? Can any leader, having ridden the wave of radical change to the very top, truly remain a radical once the weight of governing, of permanence, settles upon them? Or does the nature of holding that ultimate authority compel a leader to shore up their position using the oldest, most recognized, most conservative tools available, even if they are the tools of the enemy they just defeated? The emperor stands, magnificent and alone, his crown heavy with the abandoned promise of equality. Ask yourself, was this foresight a pragmatic recognition that France craved stability over radical ideals? Or was it the ultimate self-betrayal, the revolutionary becoming the very thing he overthrew? The cannons fall silent, but a new theater opens, the imperial court. The ink is still drying on treaties, yet you turn your gaze inward, to the heart of your burgeoning empire, and outward, to its periphery. You decide the structures of the republic. The egalitarian ideals that powered your rise are no longer sufficient. You require legitimacy, tradition, the weight of history you once scorned. You begin to build, piece by painstaking piece, a monarchy from the ground up, cloning the very system you helped dismantle. Titles cascade from your pen: marshals of the empire, dukes, princes, grand dignitaries. Men who earned their place through courage and cannon smoke are now adorned with silks and ancient-sounding ranks. But the deepest desire isn't just to reward loyalty, it's to anchor your power in blood, to found a dynasty that will outlive you. This leads to a critical, fateful decision. You will place your family on thrones across Europe, Joseph, your eldest brother, hesitant and perhaps too gentle for the task, becomes King of Naples, later King of Spain. Louis, introspective and often ill, is made King of Holland. Jerome, the flamboyant youngest, receives the Kingdom of Westphalia. Sisters are married into old European houses, made Grand Duchesses and Queens. It's a grand, sweeping move on the geopolitical chessboard, yet privately, you voice frustrations about their lack of competence, their inability to grasp the nuances of power you wield so effortlessly. Here lies a profound irony, a tragic twist of fate you yourself engineered. The revolutionary who declared the revolution is over is now the architect of a new royal house, populating Europe with Bonapartist monarchs. You sought to replace the Bourbon system, yet your ambition demands you recreate its dynastic principles, securing territories not just through conquest, but through familial lines. This isn't efficient management of conquered lands. It's the unchecked growth of personal power, metastasizing into dynastic obsession, overriding meritocracy and practical wisdom. You elevate family, knowing their weaknesses, because blood, in your new vision, must reign. Ask yourself, is this the securing of a legacy or the first act of overreach? What does it reveal about the ultimate aims of unchecked ambition, that it would so readily abandon the principles that fueled its initial rise? You build your court, you crown your family, laying the foundations for a new European order, one built on the very bedrock of inherited power you once vowed to destroy. You sit for the official portraits, the heavy coronation robes weighing on your shoulders. The ermine is soft, the velvet rich, but the weight is more than fabric and fur. Your hand rests deliberately on the scepter, a globally recognized symbol of absolute power. You are Napoleon I, Emperor of the French. These aren't just paintings, they are declarations, manifestos rendered in oils and pigments. Propaganda, yes, crafted meticulously by artists like David to project an image of legitimate, undeniable authority. Every fold of the robe, every glint on the crown, every stern line of your face is calculated to convey power, heritage, and destiny. You look every inch the monarch, the successor to Charlemagne, inheriting a mantle centuries old. Yet as you hold the pose, perhaps for hours, who looks back from the canvas? Is it truly the heir to ancient kings? Or is it still the ambitious, sharp-edged Corsican general who blew away mobs with a whiff of grapeshot? The crown, a symbol you sought with relentless drive, was meant to elevate you, to legitimize your radical restructuring of Europe. But it also anchors you to a past you ostensibly overthrew. It doesn't just project authority outward, it imposes constraints and expectations inward. You are no longer just the brilliant strategist leading his loyal soldiers. You are now bound by the expectations of royalty, trapped by the very symbols you embraced. The crown didn't just signify your ascent. It locked you into a historical role with predefined adversaries, the old monarchies, the very houses whose legitimacy you now implicitly challenge by wearing their regalia. There's a subtle, tragic irony here. The revolutionary, who dismantled feudal structures, now adopts the ultimate symbol of feudal power. You wear the crown, but in doing so, you step onto a chessboard defined by rules you didn't invent. Against players who've been playing for generations, you become a target, not just for your military might, but for the audacity of an upstart wearing stolen jewels. The old order doesn't just see a powerful emperor. They see a usurper draped in symbols he has no right to. This adoption of traditional trappings, intended to solidify your position, instead boxed you into a paradigm you couldn't escape, one that demanded conflict with those who held older, supposedly more legitimate claims to these very symbols. Consider this. Was the crown a strategic masterstroke, solidifying power, or was it a golden cage, binding the revolutionary general to the expectations and conflicts of an outdated world? What would you have done, having come so far, knowing the weight that symbol carried? You watch him arrive. Pope Pius VII, head of the Catholic Church, a man whose power is spiritual, ancient, now journeys across continents at your summons. To Paris, to Notre Dame. This isn't deference. This is a demand cloaked in ceremony. You, Napoleon Bonaparte, first consul soon to be emperor, have brought the Vicar of Christ to your capital for your coronation. It is a deliberate, breathtaking echo across history, a mirror held up to the year 800 AD. Charlemagne, the first Holy Roman Emperor, crowned by Pope Leo III. You are consciously, meticulously crafting a link across 1,000 years of European tradition, seeking to imbue your new, revolutionary empire with the legitimacy of ages. This isn't about devout faith, it's about profound calculation. The revolution had tried to erase the church, to dethrone God along with the king. You understand the folly of this. France is still overwhelmingly Catholic. Their faith is a powerful, ingrained force. To rule them absolutely, you cannot merely tolerate their religion. You must harness it. You need the church's vast, intricate network of influence, its moral authority that reaches into every village and household. The Pope's presence, his blessing upon your brow, or the lack thereof, as you'll arrange it, is a visible, undeniable signal to millions. The emperor has God's sanction, or rather, he has secured God's sanction, bending even the sacred to his will. This moment in Notre Dame, amidst the incense and the ancient stones, isn't a profession of piety. It is a masterclass in political pragmatism, a chilling demonstration of using religious authority to bolster secular power. You understand that ultimate control requires consolidating every available source of legitimacy, even those you might personally view with detachment or disdain. Faith becomes another tool in the arsenal of the state, a means to unify, to pacify, to justify. It's a transaction hidden beneath robes of silk and gold, a political alliance sealed with holy oil. The pontiff lends you the aura of divine right. You offer the church restored prominence after the revolution's turmoil. Look closely at the scene, the sacred ritual, the ancient oaths, the presence of the Pope himself, and the cold, strategic glint in the emperor's eye. It makes you wonder, does it not? How often, throughout history and even today, is spiritual power co-opted or manipulated by temporal rulers, by those pursuing power and control, purely to justify their dominance? Is faith a shield for the vulnerable, or a weapon in the hands of the powerful? This coronation was not a testament to belief, but to how belief can be used. December 2nd, 1804. The Notre Dame Cathedral looms, a Gothic giant holding its breath. Inside, the air is thick with incense, the scent of power and anticipation. Cardinals and dignitaries rustle in their silks, a sea of expectant faces. You stand on the dais, magnificent in your robes, a figure carved from destiny itself. This moment, this theatrical display, is a calculated fusion of ancient ritual and revolutionary audacity. Pope Pius VII, a man whose spiritual authority spans centuries, is here, lending the weight of God and history to your ascendance. The symbolism is potent, undeniable. You have brought the head of the Catholic Church to Paris, not to seek his blessing as previous monarchs did, but to orchestrate the spectacle that confirms your authority. The scene is set. The crown, an imperial laurel wreath of gold, a deliberate echo of Roman emperors, sits on the altar. The Pope approaches, his movements heavy with ritual significance. According to tradition, he would lift the crown, bless it, and place it upon your head, anointing you with divine approval. This is the core of monarchical legitimacy, the historical precedent that elevates rulers above mere men. But you did not climb over the rubble of the revolution, did not seize power step by bloody step, only to bow your head to another man, not even the vicar of Christ. As the Pope reaches for the crown, you move. It is swift, decisive, a gesture that rewrites centuries of tradition in an instant. Your hand reaches out, intercepts the gilded wreath before the Pope can even touch it. The movement is small, but seismic. Gasps ripple through the onlookers. Their eyes widen. Fixed on this unprecedented act, you do not hesitate. You turn away from the astonished pontiff, facing the assembled crowd, the mirror reflecting the grandeur of the moment. Slowly, deliberately, you raise the crown yourself and place it firmly upon your own head. The gold gleams under the cathedral lights. You didn't ask for legitimacy. You proclaimed it. This act is the ultimate expression of self-made authority. You are not God's anointed. You are destiny's chosen, or perhaps simply your own. The Pope's presence is reduced to that of a high-profile witness, a historical prop in your grand play. He is there to see you crown yourself, to acknowledge the reality of your power, not to bestow it. Then you turn to Josephine, kneeling beside you, radiant in her imperial gown. You lift a smaller crown, designed for the Empress, and place it upon her head. It is a beautiful, intimate gesture, a moment of shared triumph amidst the raw power play. But even this act reinforces the core message. You crown others. You bestow status. Your authority is absolute, extending even to the elevation of your consort. It is the tragedy of the revolutionary who becomes the new tyrant, the champion of the people who becomes the absolute ruler. The irony is as heavy as your new crown. Ask yourself, what does this act reveal about the nature of power? Is it truly legitimate only when granted by an external force, a church, a constitution, the people? Or does the ultimate power lie in the unwavering self-belief, the sheer force of will of an individual leader? Was this a stroke of unparalleled strategic genius, cementing your independence from traditional powers? Or was it the first visible crack of pure, unadulterated hubris, a sign that you were beginning to believe your own myth, that you were indeed above all others, including the very institutions you were trying to harness? This single dramatic gesture defines you. You came to Paris not to be crowned, but to crown yourself. And in that moment, you weren't just becoming Emperor of the French, you were forging a new definition of sovereignty. One where the leader's will was the supreme law, an idea that would haunt Europe for centuries to come. What would it feel like to stand there, the weight of history pressing down, the eyes of a continent upon you, and choose to defy tradition itself, to take the ultimate symbol of authority and claim it solely for yourself? It is a moment of terrifying, exhilarating freedom and perhaps the point of no return. The imperial eagles are cast, the crown heavy on your brow. But the moment of coronation in Notre Dame isn't merely a domestic affair, a French transformation from consul to emperor. Its echoes shatter the fragile peace across Europe. The old world, steeped in generations of Habsburg and Hohenzollern and Romanov bloodlines, watches in horrified fascination. For them, this isn't just a change in title, it's a gauntlet thrown down, a declaration of a new, upstart dynasty challenging their ancient, God-given legitimacy. You, Napoleon, are no longer simply the shrewd general, the politically adept consul. You are a founder, and founding a new empire, a new line of succession, is the most audacious act imaginable to rulers who derive their power from centuries, sometimes millennia, of inherited right. Your very existence as emperor is an insult, a threat, a revolutionary concept cloaked in monarchical robes. The reaction is swift, predictable, and devastating. Austria, Prussia, Russia, the pillars of the old order, recoil. Alliances, fragile things built on shared fear and mutual mistrust, solidify against you. The War of the Third Coalition isn't some random eruption of violence. It is the direct, inevitable consequence of ambition made manifest in the imperial title. The profound insight here is clear. Consolidating absolute power internally rarely leads to quiet contentment. Instead, the very need for security, the drive to legitimize the new order, translates outward into aggressive expansionism. To secure the throne at home, you must dominate the landscape abroad. Your internal choices about power structure don't stay within your borders. They ripple outward, reshaping international relations and inevitably leading to conflict on a grand scale. Consider the irony. You build an empire to ensure permanence, but the act of building it ignites the very forces that will relentlessly seek its destruction. It's a tragic paradox woven into the fabric of unchecked ambition. This wasn't just politics, it was existential. They saw you not as a peer, but as a revolutionary virus in a monarchical body. And viruses must be excised. Ask yourself, was this foresight, anticipating conflict, and preparing for it? Or was it the hubris of believing you could impose your will on a continent without consequence? What would you have done, standing in his boots, when the coronation cheers faded and the drums of war began to beat? This is the lesson. Ambition unbounded seeks to remake the world in its own image, and the world rarely submits without a fight. The smoke clears from Friedland, leaving behind not just vanquished armies, but a continent ripe for redesign. You stand as the undisputed master, your victories at Austerlitz, Jena, and now Friedland, echoing across Europe like thunderclaps. The old order lies shattered. Now, you don't just govern France, you orchestrate Europe itself. This is ambition unbounded, the moment you truly become the architect of a new world order, built entirely around your person and your will. You gaze upon the mosaic of states and decide it needs rearranging. Old boundaries, centuries-old principalities, are wiped away with a stroke of your pen. Kingdoms are dissolved. Republics vanish, replaced by new entities loyal to the rising sun of your empire. You carve out crowns for your brothers, your stepson, your loyal marshals, placing them on thrones from Naples to Holland, Westphalia to Spain. Europe becomes a vast chessboard, and you are the only player, moving pieces with dizzying speed, demonstrating a profound disrespect for tradition and national identity that few had ever dared before. It's a display of supreme confidence, perhaps bordering on divine right, yet born from the very real power you wielded on the battlefield. Following your legions marches the civil code, your crowning legislative achievement. You see it not just as law, but as a force of progress, a modernizing broom sweeping away feudal cobwebs, bringing clarity, equality for some, and rationality to backward lands. You genuinely believe you are exporting enlightenment, imposing order where there was chaos, efficiency where there was stagnation. To you, this isn't occupation, it's salvation. Yet the irony is palpable. The very code championing equality and rights is imposed by force, suppressing the most fundamental right of all, the right to self-determination. This era, more than any other, reveals the intoxicating power of military success. It blinded you to a crucial truth. Order imposed by bayonets rarely fosters genuine loyalty. You were building a magnificent structure, but its foundations rested on the shifting sands of conquered people's resentment. Ask yourself, was this grand design truly about bringing order to Europe, or simply extending your dominion under a more palatable guise? The seeds of future uprisings, the fierce nationalisms that would eventually consume your empire, were sown in the very act of this perceived benevolence. This attempt to enforce a single will across a continent yearning, increasingly, for its own. You wear the crown, but it feels heavy, not just with gold and jewels, but with the impossible weight of expectation. You are Napoleon, Emperor of the French, a title you forged yourself, not inherited from dusty centuries. And because you built this throne with cannon fire and political will, it demands constant, terrifying validation. You cannot rest. You cannot be merely equal to the Habsburgs or the Romanovs, those monarchs born into legitimacy. You must be superior. Every treaty signed, every handshake offered, every map redrawn must scream your preeminence. This isn't just diplomacy or strategy anymore. It's a performance for history, a perpetual assertion that your self-made dynasty is more legitimate, more powerful, more inevitable than theirs. Look closely. The man who once moved with the nimble speed of a general on the battlefield is becoming stiffened by the robes of state, burdened by the need for unwavering, godlike appearance. Every minor setback, every diplomatic misstep isn't just a problem to be solved. It's an existential threat to the very idea of the Emperor Napoleon. The financial crisis isn't just a budget issue, it's proof you can't manage an empire. A lost skirmish isn't just a tactical defeat, it's a chink in the armor of the invincible leader. This relentless pressure to maintain an impossible image, this inability to admit vulnerability or simply be without constantly proving, begins to warp judgment. Prudence looks like weakness. Consolidation feels like stagnation. The only path forward, the only way to silence the whispers and affirm the crown, is through ever greater feats, ever riskier ventures. It's a tragic irony. Achieving absolute power doesn't bring security. It strips it away, leaving you exposed on a peak where the only option seems to be climbing higher, no matter the cliff face. You see this trap clearly now, don't you? The Emperor, once a master strategist, is now a prisoner of the image he constructed. He must push further, gamble bigger, simply because the cost of appearing anything less than infallible is the collapse of his entire world. This psychological cage, built from ambition and the need for external validation, drives the decisions that lead almost inevitably, towards the chilling gamble of the Russian invasion. The cost of failure there won't just be military. It will be the shattering of the myth, the unmaking of the emperor. Ask yourself, is this the true price of a self-made throne? Does reaching the pinnacle of ambition condemn you to a cycle of escalating risk where retreat is impossible because the image, the very foundation of your power, cannot bear the weight of perceived weakness? What wisdom is there in a crown that offers authority but steals peace, forcing a leader into a corner where only the most dangerous paths seem viable? This is the cage of empire, and Napoleon is trapped within its gilded bars. The air inside the Tuileries Palace is thick with perfumed ambition. You sit at the apex, the emperor, but a curious distance begins to separate you from the world you forged. The raucous debates of the Council of State are replaced by hushed agreements and deferential nods. Those who surround you now are often chosen not for their sharp minds or brutal honesty, but for their unwavering loyalty, their family ties, or their eagerness to please. Your brothers and sisters, elevated to thrones and dukedoms, prove time and again that blood is not always thicker than competence. Marshals, once bold commanders offering candid assessments, become cautious courtiers, wary of contradicting the imperial will. The structure you built for control, the vast network of spies and prefects, paradoxically shields you from uncomfortable truths. Reports are filtered, softened, curated to fit the narrative of success. The very people who owe their fortunes to you are the least likely to tell you what you need to hear, preferring instead to echo what they believe you want to hear. It's a gilded cage built of loyalty and fear, where the murmur of reality fades into the distant background. The candid feedback you received as a general, standing elbow to elbow with men who lived and died by your decisions, is a luxury of the past. This is the cruel irony of absolute power. It elevates you above the fray, but it also isolates you from the ground truth. You become the sole arbiter, the final decision-maker, yet your understanding of the actual conditions, the morale of your troops in distant lands, the economic hardship crushing your citizens, the true capabilities of your enemies is increasingly based on second-hand, often deliberately optimistic, information. A startling truth emerges. The man who mastered logistics and detail on the battlefield is becoming increasingly detached from the logistical and human realities of his empire. You are surrounded, yet utterly alone in your thoughts and decisions. The imperial bubble, intended to broadcast your majesty, becomes a distorting lens, warping your perception. This dynamic plants the seeds of future disaster. Decisions once born of sharp insight and direct information are now potentially skewed by flattery and distance. The errors will come not just from miscalculation, but from simple, tragic ignorance. Ignorance fostered by the very power that makes you unquestionable. Ask yourself, when surrounded by yes-men and filters, how does a leader distinguish genuine counsel from dangerous flattery? How does the weight of absolute authority inevitably create a vacuum of honest feedback, leading to decisions born of arrogance and isolation? The summit is indeed lonely, and perhaps the higher you climb, the harder it is to see the ground clearly. You sit on St. Helena now, the vast, indifferent ocean, your final, inescapable prison. The empire is gone. vanished from the map, dissolved like morning mist under a pitiless sun. The crown you so famously placed on your own head, a symbol of ultimate control and destiny fulfilled, ultimately became the unbearable weight that crushed you, making you a pariah to the old world you scorned, and, perhaps even more painfully, a tyrant in the eyes of many you once inspired and led. Look back across the waves, across the years. Was the creation of the empire, this gilded cage of inherited power, truly inevitable once you held absolute sway as first consul? Did the burning desire for permanence, for a legitimacy that echoed the ancient houses you'd overthrown, inherently demand a return to monarchy, albeit one you crafted yourself? Or was it the fatal flaw, the precise moment when revolutionary possibility hardened into authoritarian overreach, when the vibrant promise of meritocratic rise curdled into dynastic ambition? It's a question history still wrestles with, a ghost ship sailing just beyond the horizon of your legacy. The decision to become emperor was the ultimate pivot, the moment ambition transformed from serving the state. As consul, you had brought order, stability, and a modern framework to a fractured nation, to serving the self, to securing your line, your name, for all time. This self-coronation set you on an irreversible collision course, not just with every established power in Europe, but eventually, tragically, with the very limits of your own undeniable, yet finite, abilities. The man who embodied the Enlightenment ideal of rising through sheer talent and will chose to build a system based on inheritance, titles, and bloodline. A profound, heart-wrenching irony that history cannot ignore. You fought the old world by becoming its most spectacular, if fleeting, imitation. It prompts the timeless, unsettling question: does absolute power inevitably corrupt the individual, or does it merely strip away the veneer, revealing the corruption? The self-serving drive, already inherent in ambition itself. The magnificent, brutal path from first consul to emperor, then to this desolate exile, serves as a stark, unblinking warning etched into the annals of leadership. Consider this chilling echo. What if history were to repeat itself? What if a leader, rising from crisis and chaos, consolidating immense popular support and practical power, were presented with that same fundamental choice between stewardship of the nation's future and self-coronation, cementing personal rule into a seemingly unassailable dynasty? Would they learn from your dramatic, painful fate, seeing the crown not as a symbol of triumph, but as a trap? Or would they, like you, be consumed by those same ancient, intoxicating drives for absolute control and eternal legacy, trading liberty for perceived stability, for the grand illusion of permanence? Your extraordinary life, particularly that fateful pivot towards empire, teaches us perhaps the most crucial, bitter lesson. The very structures we build with such relentless energy to secure our power can become the most suffocating prisons of our potential. And the glittering titles we covet with such desperate need can ultimately become nothing more than the sad epitaphs of our downfall. Ambition unchecked is a fearsome engine, capable of conquering continents. But without wisdom, without accountability, without a clear-eyed, humble understanding of its true human costs, it drives leaders not towards enduring greatness, but towards splendid, inevitable ruin. In your own words, a chillingly honest confession, whispered in the silence of St. Helena, capturing the essence of your rise and fall. Power is my mistress. I have worked too hard at her conquest to allow anyone to deprive me of her or even to covet her. That mistress, it seems, demanded everything in the end. In the final analysis, it wasn't solely the combined armies of Europe that defeated him. It was believing the crown made him untouchable.